Welcome back, everybody. This is Hadrim, and tonight we are doing another card review. This will be card review number 9 for Knights of the Frozen Throne. So, getting right into it, we have Play Dead. So, this is a 1-mana hunter spell which triggers a friendly minion's death rattle. Now, this is actually pretty cool. There was a spell in the past, Feign Death, which did that for your entire board, but because it costs 2 mana, you didn't really see it that much in combination decks. In conjunction with other death rattles released at the time, because it was in Goblins vs. Gnomes, and we did have the Naxxramas expansion at the time. So this is a 1-mana spell, and that actually makes a significant difference on the playability of the card. It is targeted, so we have minions that kind of do the same thing. The 3-mana 3/3, the Princess Huron 6-mana 6/5 would have a targeted effect that does exactly the same thing. So it generates tempo as well as activating a death rattle, which in Hunter could also generate more tempo. But because this is a 1-mana card, it makes it significantly better. And plus, that's a very cute dog up there. And so we have some very significant synergies with this card since the introduction of a lot more death rattle cards out there with the Knights of the Frozen Throne expansion, and we also have some pretty influential control cards in Shaman, like the Bowman, Abominable Bowman. So it might actually be worth like playing that with Abominable Bowman just to get a 1-mana beast, so you can get a free beast on the board. And if it happens to be something that's mid-rangey to controlling, like Savannah Highmane, or you can even play this on Savannah Highmane to get the 2/2s, and that could actually be like Dr. Boom level of power. So you have a lot of potential with this card just because it costs 1 mana, and I actually think that that could push the Death Rattle theme for Hunters a lot. Because they can get a lot of value very quickly with this card. I really like the idea. You might see a lot of Hunters from now on with this card. Plus, I want to adopt that puppy. He's really cute. Ice fishing. So you can fish your opponent's win rate with this card. 2 mana, draw 2 Murlocs from your deck. So without any downsides whatsoever, it's actually better than what was the card? Ancestor's Call. It was some card in Shaman that cost 2 mana, draw 2, but you overloaded 2 at the same time, so it kind of cost you in tempo. This is a better version of that card. This is better than Arcane Intellect and Murloc Shaman. But if you consider the general use of this card outside of Murloc Shaman, it's just about like how good Curator could be. This kind of wants you to play the Burlock card that we saw in my last review, the Murloc that freezes an enemy. That would be the one general use Murloc to play with this card, whether that or not that merits just drawing it from your deck. But with this one card, you can draw both copies of that card from your deck. So, I mean, if this was in Paladin, would Paladins run a 2 mana draw 2 cards if your only Murloc in the deck was Hydrologist? I think there's some situations where you probably would. I think you would run at least one of those cards just to draw 2 Hydrologists. In a more tempo kind of mid-range deck, not exactly in a control deck, because you're using up 1 card to draw 2 more cards in your deck. But it does have a Curator kind of feel to it. So I think this card's very powerful in a Murloc deck, but it might actually see some general use here and there just to pull out the freezing Murlocs. Because in those control strategies, you might actually need that. Well, on second thought, Curator might actually be better in that regard because it is a taunt minion, and you can get other cards with it, so it may actually not see use in there. But in a Murloc deck, I think this is pretty powerful because it does refill your hand without needing to run any other form of card draw. You might just replace your totems with this card just to keep up the board pressure, and that might actually make it really powerful. So, Murloc Shaman, here we go. Good luck with that. Drakkari Defender. It's a 3-mana 2/8. This is the overstated Shaman minion that we kind of expected. It's a 3-mana 2/8 taunt, but it has 3 for overload, so it actually costs 6 mana. And we've learned that overload kind of has this. It is negative, but it kind of isn't really negative. Playing this on turn 3, you're basically playing something similar to Dirty Rat, but it's actually more like the Death Lord that we saw in Naxxramas. And it's actually better than that, since 3 mana 2/8 is still a very sturdy body that a lot of aggressive minions will have to trade into. 2 attack is not that strong, but it is probably strong enough to kill off every 1-drop your opponent might play unless they buff them. So this could actually hold off a good deal of the game. And I think it would probably see a good deal of play in Control Shaman. So they finally get a 3-drop that could actually hold off a board instead of overloading yourself, summoning something very small like 2/3 with taunt, or 2/2/3s with taunt. The overload is a little bit of a downside in that kind of a deck because you do kind of prevent your next play, and if your opponent has an answer for it, you do just kind of lose since you skip your next turn, essentially. But you do have kind of a volcano to follow up in the following turn, so it may actually save you from that. It could actually be pretty good. As a mid-game card, it's kind of more necessary to play this in the early game, but you do get a lot of risk from that overload. It's not a really powerful late game card since 2 attack isn't very strong, but it is a very good control card. It's actually pretty powerful. So I think we'll be seeing this a lot in the Control Shaman matchups. Shadow Ascendant is a 2 mana 2/2 priest card. At the end of your turn, give another random friendly minion +1/+1. Now, so this is a combination of 2 cards from Classic that we don't really see that much anymore. That is Bladesmith, which is a 2 mana 1/3, give a random friendly minion +1 attack, and Young Priestess, which is a 1 mana 2/1, which gives a random friendly minion +1 health. So this is a combination of those 2 cards with the stats and the effect, but it's at the same cost, so that actually kind of makes it much better than that. It isn't priest, so it does kind of push a little bit of an aggressive priest strategy a bit if you have a Northshire Cleric on the board on turn 1. If your opponent hasn't killed it, this actually makes it a 2/4, a bit of a delayed 2/4, but it is kind of good since you can use your cleric to draw a bunch of cards, and if it gets too big, your opponent will just never be able to kill it. So they will be able to kill the Shadow Ascendant though, but by that time you have some other cards in your hand to help deal with it. A bunch of your opponent's cards. Might not see much constructed play, but it does have some interesting uses about buffing a card by 1/1. It'll definitely see a lot of play in Arena. 1, it is common, so you'll probably see it a lot. And 2, if you have a good 1-drop and you follow this up with it, it'll be a fantastic play. Which Priest kind of really needed the early game a little bit in Arena, and this might actually push Priest up a bit. And I'll be looking forward to trying to utilize Priest more in Arena with this card. It's just kind of whatever for constructed. Probably not good enough. It doesn't really synergize with a lot of Priest strategies, but it does have a cool concept behind it. Acolyte of Agony is a 3 mana 3/3 with Priest. Another common card for Priest. That's a minion. It is another 3-drop though. But Lifesteal is a pretty impactful tag on a minion that's statted like this. It isn't Priest. Priests don't necessarily utilize lifesteal as much as any other classes. They do have a lot of ways to heal themselves. But this card could make it to where they don't have to use their hero power if they want to play a more aggressive style. This card can be used in an aggressive deck to kind of play against other aggressive decks because it has the lifesteal. You can actually beat your opponent in the health game. So in that regard, it could be pretty good, but otherwise, it's just a kind of okay card. Unless there's some other kind of really powerful ways that utilize lifesteal, this is just kind of a 3 mana 3/3 in Priest. It can save a lot of games, but most of the time, it's just going to get maybe 1 or 2 heals off, like an Earthen Ring Farseer. And that's still okay, but it's just not very strong. Rogues get Roll the Bones, so it's a 2 mana spell draw card. If it has Death Rattle, cast again. So if your deck has Death Rattle minions, Or I think it actually works for a Death Rattle weapon as well, but I don't think rogues have Death Rattle weapons at the moment. Uh, yeah, but if you manage to somehow 50-50 or better on the draw, it's 2 mana draw 2, and it's pretty good. But if it's like, if you that's another Death Rattle, it's 2 mana draw 3, and that's fantastic. The downside is how many Death Rattles would you have to fit into your deck to be able to utilize this effect consistently for 2 mana. I believe, I think I know the statistics on the card. We've researched it a little bit, and it looks like someone did actually do some research on the card on how consistent it would have to be to draw at least two. You would have to fit anywhere from 10 to 12 Death Rattle cards into your deck for it to be minimally useful. Since by the time you're able to play it, you have at least half of your deck be able to utilize the effect. So, in that regard, you have to put in a lot of Death Rattles, so you'd be running a Death Rattle Rogue. We haven't really seen that many Death Rattle Rogues recently. Now, yes, you have the Jade mechanic, but I don't think there's enough of them to be able to consistently use the card, so it's probably on the most part 2 mana draw 1. 2 mana draw 2 would be great, but rogues do have ways of drawing, cycling through cards, and comboing out more than this card would. If Gadget's and Auctioneer ever gets rotated out, people would probably go back to Sprint. So that may or may not. This may or may not be influential. So yeah, it's just kind of a whatever card. Fallen Sun Cleric is a 2 mana 2/1 battle cry. Give a friendly minion +1/+1. So we have Shattered Sun Cleric, which is a 3 mana 3/2 that does exactly the same thing. So this is a discount on it, but it's a weaker body. I think that actually makes a good difference. The 1 mana cheaper. It is still aggressively statted, so in this kind of way, it's about the same as what was that minion called? Oh yeah, it was in the Grand Tournament. Lance Carrier. It was a 2 mana 1/2 battle cry. Give a friendly minion +2 attack. So it wasn't a very aggressively statted minion, but it made a weaker minion much better in the aggressive game. And that card still didn't really see too much play back then. So this card might be too slow for constructed. +1/+1 is probably better than +2 attack in most situations, because the extra health could actually cause you to trade up and survive. But I think the body itself is just weak. 1 health is definitely worth pinging off, so you spend 2 mana to give another minion +1/+1. Yeah, I don't really think it's that influential, but you'll probably see it a lot in Arena, and in those situations where you can tempo out with this card following up a decently sized board, it could actually push your win condition in that way. But in Constructed, it's just not specific enough, and it's not strong enough for a lot of the synergies, but it's a very good Arena card. Next we have Deathspeaker. It's a 3 mana 2/4 battlecry. Give a friendly minion immune this turn. Giving a friendly minion immune for 1 turn is the same as giving it Divine Shield. Now Paladins have a 2 mana 2/2 Argent Protector that gives a minion Divine Shield, and that's actually seen a fair deal in Arena in some cases with the board trading game, but it is very slow by itself. But if the minion was neutral, I think a lot of classes would actually play it, especially classes like Hunter or classes that want to push a board initiative like Druid would. So this would actually give you a free trade by, discounting a 3 mana for a 2/4 body, which isn't aggressively statted, but it's actually not terrible. I just don't think it's strong enough for a constructed game. Although, since it is common, we will see it a lot in Arena, and it will be very influential in Arena for a lot of the classes. So I'm discrediting the card a little bit because it's basically there's no difference between Immune and Divine Shield for every class except Paladin. So for that, in that regard, the card is weaker than the 2 mana 2/2. But at the same time, if there were any other class that could utilize giving the opportunity for a minion to survive any trade, like for example, if it has poisonous, it could be very influential. So it has some very powerful effects with certain cards and other classes, or that other classes can utilize, just like a Divine Shield would. But in most cases, that's just going to be it. It's not going to push a win condition. It's just going to allow you to trade a board up, which is really good for Arena, and just not that powerful and constructed. And now we have Skulking Geist. Now this card created a lot of waves on the net. 6 mana, 4/6, destroy all 1-cost spells in both players' hands and decks. So we have the counter to Jade Druid that everyone's been looking for. Maybe. While it does destroy all their Jade Idols and Earthen Scales, you do have to put a 6 mana 4/6 into your deck. Now, Jade Druid is obviously very powerful right now in the current meta, and it's one of the most commonly played decks, and it is in a top tier as far as anti-control goes. It does beat control decks in the late game because of their constant supply of Jades. And this card denies that in that regard, so you can deny your opponent their win condition against you, but the problem is you still have to deal with everything else in their deck. So it's likely that this could be a counter to Jade, but it's not going to be 100% winnable from that rate. You're still going to have to deal with a bunch of other cards, and then Jade Druid also has other cards that don't involve the 1 mana spell that constantly cycles itself, which honestly is a minimal to marginal win condition for a Druid against other control decks. It is a very good strategy to have, but you're only basically killing off maybe a third of their deck, or a third of their win condition. So they still have other ways where they can defeat you. So it may be used as a tech in that regard. Outside of that, though, you do have other combo-y cards that cost 1 mana that this can hit, but you don't want to be running a lot of them yourself. This does kind of kill off your own Shield Slams, so you want to play out your Shield Slams first. It does destroy every Paladin secret. So against secret paladins, and this is basically the counter card you've been looking for. But in most other cases, you're looking to destroy maybe cards like Ice Lances and Hallucinations. You're looking to kill off those kinds of cards. But by turn 6, this isn't going to be used in an aggressive deck. Yeah, sure, you can target Mark of the Lotus with this card, but by turn 6, are you really looking to destroy off those cards instead of dealing with the board? If you're not dead by then, you've pretty much won. So that's not something you want to play it with. So it really only has its condition of killing off very specific combos and Jade Idols in this meta. So it has some really good counter usage, but really it may not work out the way you think it is. Of course, people are going to play it because people are still going to be playing Jade Druid, because it's just that good against every control deck out there. So you might see it eventually in more refined decks if Jade Druid becomes rampant. But for now, I think it's just going to be a whatever card. We'll just wait and see. And then the last card on the review is the new Death Knight hero for Priest, Shadowreaper Anduin. 8 cost, destroy all minions with 5 or more attack. So you get kind of an AoE effect for Shadow Word Death. It kind of works in the same way as Shadow Word Horror does with 2 or less attack minions. So this is a very good card against control. You're looking to probably hit maybe 1 or 2 minions with this. You're looking to do probably 2 or more, but even if you do just 1, it's still fine because you have the armor gain and you have the new hero power that develops. And that hero power is Void Form. Steals 2 damage, and after you play a card, refresh this. So this is a very combo-y card. I mean, this is kind of harkened to like Lyra the Sunshard. It's comparable to that. And the fact that you put a bunch of cheap spells in your deck and you gain a lot of value with Lyra, this card actually pushes a win condition. in the fact that, okay, well, you have two Radiant Elementals on the board, and you just Shadow Visions, and you pick up your other Shadow Visions in your deck. You can just constantly burn your opponent down from that. So you can Shadow Visions your Shadow Visions, cast it for cheap, you can refresh your Void Form, and just ping your opponent off 10 damage at a time. That's pretty good. And it has synergy with Auctioneer Beardo, so anything that you can utilize for, and Raza the Unchained. Raza the Chained. Yes, so you have the infinite combo with the that's available for priests to have with the free hero power and the infinite shadow visions rotation. So you basically can OTK with this strategy. It does work the same way as Shadow, the Shadow card that does the same thing, but you don't want to play that in this deck. This kind of fulfills the strategy much better, even though you do lose out on the damage. So 8 mana is a lot to ask for, but you can use the hero power right away, so you can destroy off a minion with 5 attack and then use the hero power to kill off something small at the same time. You lose the way of healing yourself through hero power, which can be influential in the late game, but I think this is going to be used in more like the combo decks, and I'm actually really forward to looking at it. And this is actually a pretty simple hero. All the rest of them have been fairly like complex in the fact that you build up a certain way and you play your decks a certain way, and you gain in power for playing your Death Knight hero, and then you have this like complicated stave off or win condition. This is actually pretty simple, and I like it, and it's got some pretty good use. And I think out of all the other heroes, this actually might be the weaker one because the hero power is only about as good as what you put for your hand, or the cards that you put in your deck. Because if you want to play a control version of this deck, you're probably looking to play it with Raza. So you're looking at a Kazakus deck. You can put a bunch of cheap cards, just burn your opponent out. Maybe you might even make it an aggressive form of Kazakus. Yeah, you can utilize it with several minions that can buff other minions, utilize some very cheap spells to burn your hero out, and then this could just be your finisher. That could be a pretty good strategy to have. And since it's in Priest, you can also run some controlling cards too that can help build up against other control decks. So yeah, I mean it's fine. I like the card. I'm looking forward to playing with it. Nice hair, by the way. So that's it for this review. Like and subscribe to my videos, and I'll be coming out with the next one shortly. So we hope to see you again next time. Stay tuned, and we will see you. Have a good one.